It's my most favourite time of year, Halloween. Hello my lovelies, welcome to a special Halloween video. Now today I have 4 very scary, ghostly, demonic story times to share. Now, these aren't all my stories, they're both mine and also my family stories. Now, these may not be for the faint of heart, so although they are short, they are pretty intense and scary. So do not watch on your own at night unless you are crazy and enjoy that sort of thing. So grab a nice cup of tea or coffee or whatever you like, preferably in a little mini pumpkin like I have. I mean, how cute is that? Oh my God. And enjoy. Now, the first story I'm going to be sharing is my nan story, and it's actually quite a tragic, sad story, but at the same time quite creepy and scary. So this is a very special story that she shared with us and my mum and my auntie quite a long time ago, but it's something that she kept hidden for many, many years. So as many of you guys know, I come from a bloodline of witches, so all the women in my family are very spiritual, and we all seem to have like the gifts of being able to interact with spirits and ghosts and that sort of thing. Well, most of us. So my nan is one of those. And basically when she was young, she worked as a maid, a cleaner maid. Basically, it was very similar to Downton Abbey. So she worked in that sort of environment. She was like one of those, you know, paid servants. And during this time, she actually was in love with a guy called Francisco, which is Francis in English. But for whatever reason, both of their families hated one another. So it was very much like Romeo and Juliet, very tragic. And my nan at the time, she didn't realise why. When she declared her love to her mum, she was like, no, solid no, you are not going to marry this man. Even though she was so in love with him, he was the absolute love of her life. So she was intending to elope with him basically. So she was planning on running away with him so they could secretly get married and be together forever basically. Despite the families being completely against it and hating one another. So it wasn't that they hated my nan or that they hated him, they just hated the families. So they must have had some sort of, I don't know, beef with each other, but that they were hiding. So this of course was very hard on both of them. Fortunately, it was very hard on him. And we believe today that it caused him great depression. And unfortunately, this led him to actually kill himself. So it was very tragic that he decided to take his own life by jumping into a well and drowning. So it was a few days had gone by until my nan and the families actually found out what had happened to him, as obviously he was missing for quite some time, as his body was hidden in the well for probably nearly a week, so quite a few days. And then tragically they found out that obviously he had killed himself, he drowned in the well, and obviously my nan found out, and this completely broke her heart. A few years had gone past and my nan was now seeing a new man, which is my granddad. So they met at the place that my nan actually worked. So she was still a chambermaid and he was a very good pastry chef. So he made all the cakes and pastries for the rich family that owned the estate. So they got married and they were together, and she loves my granddad, but of course it wasn't, you know, quite the same. He was never quite the ultimate love of her life as Francis was. So a few years had gone by, and one day my nan woke up as she heard a noise as she was sleeping. And towards her wardrobe, which was actually the flat that she had for many, many years, that me and my family would visit in Portugal for a long, long time. And it was very creepy. We were very scared of this flat. It was very haunted. However, this particular night she woke up, and this was way before we were all born. And she saw her beloved Francis standing there, watching her as she was sleeping. However, he was dripping wet. So she looked at him and was very startled, and she was just like, what are you doing here? Like, obviously shocked. But my nan obviously was a spiritual woman, so she knew that it was his spirit. And all he could say was, please forgive me, please forgive me. So obviously his spirit, because he committed suicide, has been lost for many, many years in darkness, in purgatory. And it took him all this time to actually find my nan, because obviously he died of that guilt, knowing that she would be so heartbroken that he obviously took his own life. Probably to prevent her and protect her, because he knew that she wanted to elope, and that obviously would have got her in a lot of trouble, and that would have completely broken up her whole family, that she would never be able to see her family again. So we don't know for certain why he done it, but you know, we suspect that's probably the reason why. And unfortunately she never found out why, as all he kept saying was, please forgive me, please forgive me. So she said, yes, I forgive you. And then we don't know for sure, but she said that basically he went over to her and they made love. So right next to my granddad as he slept. So that was obviously a very magical, you know, startling, shocking experience, or, you know, it all rolled into one for her. But in the morning, she walked over to the wardrobe where he was stood previously during the night, around the witching hour, so 3 a.m. as that's when the veil is at its thinnest. So that's why spirits are most active at that time, if you know, you want to know. And basically she looked down and there was a huge wet patch on the carpet where he was stood. So this really was like, wow, confirmation that that was real and he really truly was there. This happened a few more times and he kept coming to her. And obviously every time she saw him, he would just do the same thing and he kept asking for forgiveness. So she'd done this a few more times and eventually he just completely vanished. So then he stopped visiting her. So she feels like he finally was able to move on. He was finally able to cross over, that his spirit, you know, found the light. And because he knew that she truly forgave him, he was finally at peace. Because that's why most spirits are left behind, or they get stuck or lost in the astral realms of this earth, is because they have unfinished business. The second story is a really creepy story that my mother experienced in our auntie's house. Now, my auntie's house is notoriously haunted, especially back in the day when we were children. Me and my sister in particular hated going there, and even my mum hated going there as well. And my sister's sister, so my auntie would always be like, oh, stay round, like sleep over, and we'd be like, no, it's fine, we'll drive back, because we lived about half an hour away from her. So we would always do everything we could to make up excuses to go home, because we didn't want to stay there at night. Because it's like, once nighttime hit, the whole energy of that house just like changed, and it was just so eerie. Even during the day, it would creep us out a lot. So this story, this experience traumatized my mum. Like to this day, it will never leave her. Like this is something she'll remember till the day she dies, unfortunately, because it was just so vivid and so terrifying. So basically we would sleep, when we would stay around, we would sleep all in my cousin's bedroom. She had quite a sort of biggish room, so she had 2 single beds and me and my sister would sleep on the floor. So my cousin was in one side of the room and then my mum was on another single bed which was facing the door. And because me and my sister were terrified of the dark and always had to have lights, because we saw so many spirits as children, we refused to sleep in the dark. We had the door open, just ajar. And what's very interesting about this night is before my mum experienced what she experienced and saw something absolutely terrifying, I remember being on the floor, and of course me and my sister were already scared and it would take us so long to fall asleep. We saw this really bizarre, very long, large red orb. So it was a bright red orb, which I've only ever seen once in my life that I can remember. and it was hovering all around the room. And I remember it going over my mum, and it went over me and and my sister Giselle, and then it went over my cousin, and it was just circling the room for ages. And I was just like, you know, frozen in fear, just like watching it, like. And then eventually I put the covers over my head, and you know, I just tried to force myself to sleep as I didn't want to watch it anymore. Until a few minutes later, or probably an hour or so, we heard my mum panicking and scream. So basically she woke up and she was laying on her back. So she had perfect view of the door that was open, and there was light obviously behind it. There's a hallway light was on. So as she opened her eyes, and again, it was probably around 2-3 a.m, it's like witching hour time, she saw the most terrifying face, a clown face of all things, staring at her. So his head was poking right on top of the door. So it was just poking over the door, looking straight at her, with these big black eyes and a pure white face and a huge smile. And it was, she says, the most terrifying thing she's like ever experienced or ever seen in her life. And it was probably some sort of demonic entity. It knew, because my mum doesn't like clowns, that would freak her out, because they like, it's like It, like if you've seen that movie It, like that is actually spot on to a degree of what demons do, because they feed off your fear. So they shapeshift to things that they know will freak you out, to get obviously the fear energy response. So this is what happens with her, and this horrible entity was just smiling, looking at her, and that's all it did. It was just looking at her, and she said it was so clear as if it was just a hovering head. Obviously she knew it had a very tall body, like it was so tall, because its head was like hanging over the door. But obviously she couldn't see it because it was hiding behind the door. So obviously she sat up, and you know, it freaked her out, and she screamed. And my mum is very brave, like she's not scared of pretty much any, like it takes a lot to scare my mum. Like she'll grab spiders, like she makes me look like a complete pussy. She's very brave, she'll walk around in the dark, like not much can startle her, but this like freaked her the fuck out. And after that, we did not sleep at my auntie's house for a very long time, if ever. Now, this next story is actually one of my stories, and also my very old friends I experienced it with back in school. So this is a really bizarre story, and it's something that I will never forget, as it was so physical. So it didn't happen, you know, at night when you're sort of half asleep, you know, witching hour, anything like that. Like it was so physical and so shocking. It was something like out of Stranger Things, like honestly. It was something out of like a horror film. So basically me and my friends, we were in high school, so secondary school. We're probably about 12, 13, so about in year 8 in secondary school. It was about this time of year, so Halloween, autumn time, you know, late October, November time, and we would stay after school to do these dance classes. So we were doing these dance classes, and they would normally go on for about 2 hours after school time. So obviously by the time we was come out to go home, it was pitch black. Now this school that I stayed in is actually, it was pretty haunted. I did see some other weird things there, and there was rumours that in the old part of the school, which actually used to be a very old house, someone had hanged themselves there and killed themselves. So it had horrible energy. I really hated my school. It was very creepy. Obviously because I could pick up on these things. So I never liked being there on my own or at night. So we were going home, and obviously we had to stop by our lockers, which were in a very big building. So we used to have separate blocks. So there was A block, B block, C block. And in C block, which was where our lockers were, there was a very big building. It had 2 floors, and it was very long. So it was like a very long rectangular building, really long. So there was many, many classes in there. And what was strange is as we were walking towards the school, and we looked at it, and we realized all the lights were on. So every single room, all the lights were on. So we found this very bizarre, and we didn't even expect the building to be open because it was so late, but we thought, oh, let's just, you know, go there to pick up some books or, you know, whatever we wanted to do. So we thought we'd check before we went home. But as soon as we saw the lights were on, we were like, that's a bit strange, because obviously the cleaners in our school, they was like start cleaning like as soon as like it was home time. They get the hoovers out and, you know what I mean, like they'd be gone quick. Normally like half hour, an hour tops after the kids are gone, like they'll all be gone as well. So we knew there was no caretakers around at that time as it was so late. So we walked up to it quite cautiously, and as we're approaching the building, we could hear banging. So as soon as we opened the door, we could hear something running all across C block, all the way up and then all the way down, all the way up and then all the way down. So there was something really heavy running up and down this really long ass building fast. And we looked at each other in horror, and we were just like, what the fuck? Like, what is that? But we were so scared, you instantly go into like adrenaline, like fight or flight mode. So we were just like shocked and thinking, that ain't a human, because it was so heavy. And I've also had this happen to me after this experience, which is quite freaky. At home, again, I would hear something running up and down my roof, really heavy footed, but you could tell it was like possibly more than 2 legs. And yeah, I don't know what it was even to this day. But so we approached the stairs. So basically the layout of the building was, there was lockers on one side. So if you were like facing, so you've gone through the doors, there'll be lockers on the left side, and then to the right there was a spiral staircase. So quite wide, very wide stairs going up and then up again. And then when you get to the second floor, there was 2 double French doors that had glass windows. And then obviously on that side, on the bottom, there was a door, and then all the classes were there on the lower floor level, and then it was the same on the upper floor level. But it didn't have a door that side, it was just like all the way open, and there was just 2 double doors, and then it was just like a whole long hallway, really long, like, I don't know, maybe 30 foot long, probably longer. Like it was a really long like building with many classrooms. That's what was so terrifying. We could hear something running up and down so fast. And at first we just thought, oh, maybe it's like, you know, people here. But then we just knew, like, we didn't even think, like, it can't be a prankster, because that is too loud and too fast to be a human. It sounded like a velociraptor. Like it was honestly that fast and that heavy. So I cautiously approached the stairs, and my friend was like, no, like don't go up there, don't go up there. Like she didn't want me to go up and have a look. And me, I was being like the stupid person that gets killed in a horror film, like I want to have a look. So I slowly was walking up the stairs, and I was listening, and I kept looking back at her being like, what the fuck? And then honestly, I was getting so scared, and I was trying to time it right. So I was trying to sneak up to the doors when obviously it was on that side, because I didn't want it running past the door and then seeing me, because obviously there was 2 glass like panels. But basically I approached the door, and it was all the way on that side. And then I slowly crept up to the door, and then I grabbed the handle and I opened it just a tiny bit, just a jar. But what was so creepy is as soon as I opened the door, it's like it heard, it knew. And it's like, boom, boom, boom. And then it stopped, probably about halfway between. And and obviously my friend was like gripping the rails, like staring up at me, like just in shock, like fear, like waiting. And I was just like so scared, waiting to like think, oh my God, like this is some alien, I'm gonna get like eaten. And then basically as soon as it stopped, it let out this most awful scream, like this horrible gut-wrenching, like streaky scream. And it was not human. Like a human could not have made this noise. I can't even mimic it. I can't find like anything that comes close. It was just such a strange noise. It was like a roar, but like a screech and I don't know, at the same time. So it was so loud, and obviously I let go and I bolted down those stairs. Probably I ran the fastest I've ever ran in my whole life. And my friend's eyes were just so wide in her head, I'll never forget her face. And we bolted down the stairs together, grabbed our shit, and we were just like legged it out of the room, out the building. And basically, what was terrifying is after it done the screech, I heard it running to the door as we were running. So I knew whatever it was like, it was gonna come at us. So basically we got out of there just in time. And then we looked back up when we were outside and like run a bit. And it's like, we could still hear it. Like, it was just so terrifying. And then we just thought, fuck this. And we just legged it like out the whole school entirely. So I will never forget that. Like, that was one of the most weirdest experiences I've ever had in my life, as it was literally like, it could have been a physical monster, it could have been an alien, it could have been a demon. Like, I don't know what the fuck it was. Like, it was not human. It did not sound human. It certainly wasn't anyone pranking us, because it was so late and no one could have mimicked that heavy feet and that noise, and there was no laughing afterwards either. So yeah, that was the most scariest thing that I've ever experienced in school with someone else as well as a witness. It was actually my old school friend Nikki, so shout out to you if you're watching this. I'm sure you remember it too. And yeah, to this day we never found out what it was. Now, this last ghost story is, again, mine that I experienced, but with my whole family this time. And also, yeah, it was just my whole family. So this is why you should never do a Ouija board or seances, especially around this time of year. So during Halloween, the veil is very thin, which means you can communicate with dead people and also demonic beings and other nasty little entities more easily at this time. Like, the veil was thin between our dimension and their dimensions. So what this means is it can be very dangerous if you don't know what you're doing, which most people don't. So I always say, do not touch an Ouija board or do any sort of seances or try to contact the dead if you don't know how to put a spirit back where it comes from. And even then, it's still dangerous if you unfortunately attract or connect with a very demonic being, because they can be extremely difficult to put back, and you will have to find a very experienced shaman or medium or whatever, and they can quite honestly destroy your whole life. Trust me, I've been there, done that. So back in the day when we were really stupid, me and my family used to do seances quite frequently. And just for fun. It was actually my mother's fault, so shout out to you. And she would always get bored, and in the evenings, being her little witchy self, she'd be like, let's do a seance. And me and my sister were very apprehensive. We'd be like, oh, mum, like, because we would get scared, obviously, and we're like, we don't want to do a bloody seance. But my mum, because she didn't have much fear, she would find it really exciting and fun. She'd even go around the house like pitch black, like looking for ghosts on her phone. So, and this house that we lived in was really, really haunted. All the houses I've lived in, but especially my childhood, were awful, awful. And this is probably one of the worst houses we were in, that I personally saw the most entities and got attacked like a lot. So I really didn't want to do it. But my father was around at the time as well. And he's not with my mum, but they were just friends at that time. So he came visiting, and he was just like, yeah, okay. Like, he didn't really believe in anything like that. He was quite skeptical about spirits back then. He's not anymore, but he's since had quite a few experiences. Not as much as us, but he's definitely had quite profound, incredible spiritual experiences I might share in the future videos. But basically this night he came round, and my mum, she said, let's do a seance. So what we would do is we'd get a glass, just a normal glass, and we didn't even have an Ouija board. But it was pretty much like the similar thing, but without using the Ouija board. So we'd turn the glass upside down on the kitchen table, which was just a big wooden table, and we'd all sit in each corner. At first we'd all hold hands to create the circle, and we would say, oh, like, we wouldn't even protect ourselves. This is how like stupid we were. So we would just hold hands and be like, is there any spirits here? We would ask, like, you know, tap on the walls to communicate with us. So what we would do is we would say, you know, tap once for no or tap twice for yes. So first we'd call out and we'd, you know, keep asking questions until we would get some sort of contact. And in this house, it never took long to get contact. And basically we would start hearing something tapping on the walls. And then we'd all put our hands on the glass. And I mean, we were just having fun. So we weren't even trying to do anything. We had no intention otherwise, just to have fun and, you know, connect with a spirit because it was fun. So big mistake, do not do this. And basically we had our fingers all on the glass. So you can't break the circle. So you all have to do it. And sooner or later, I mean, we've done this quite a few times, but this particular night, we made contact with something really dark. We made contact with something that was so strong and had awful energy that it forever put us off ever doing a seance again, except my mum. But all three of us, me and my sister in particular, were like, no, never again. We're not doing this ever again. And so we all had our fingers on the glass, and sooner or later, I can't remember what we were asking, but the energy got really, really thick. It got really, really intense. And obviously we could feel that something was there, and there was loads of things going on in the kitchen. It got very, very amplified, and the glass started turning and turning and started circling, but then it was getting really aggressive. So it was going so fast and we were just like, oh my God, Jesus. And none of us were like faking it because obviously we knew what's the point. And my dad, because he's quite empathic and spiritual himself without even knowing, he started to get possessed. So he was taking on the energy of this spirit, and he just started crying and crying and crying because this energy was coming through him. So he was in tears, bawling his eyes out, and my mum was just trying to ask questions to it. And me and Giselle were just terrified, like me and my sister, and we were just like, oh God, like what's happening? And obviously it was nighttime, we only had little fucking tea lights, so it was very dark in our kitchen. And things were getting thrown around in the kitchen, things were like, pictures like falling off. It was something out of like a paranormal film, like honestly. And then me and my sister heard and felt something was standing right behind us. And it said something, and then it like growled, and then this horrible cold energy like brushed between me and my sister, and it terrified us so much that we broke the circle, and we were just like, oh, we just like screamed. And we bolted to the lights, we turned the light on, and we were just like, fuck this shit, fuck off. And my dad, bless him, was in a state. He just like, we gave him like sugary things, you know, to get his energy back. And he was just like, he couldn't even remember that he was crying and he'd done all that. It was intense. It was very, very intense. And so basically we made contact with a very strong, powerful spirit. It was very angry, but also sad. We don't know who or what it was. It wouldn't tell us its name or anything. But yeah, we were very foolish, and after that we obviously had opened the doorway, and there was so much bad luck, so much other hauntings and spiritual attacks and all this sort of thing. Obviously if you've watched my other videos, you probably remember me talking about the monk, that entity that was latched onto me for, you know, many, many years. I believe that it could have been him because the energy was so dark and it was so strong and powerful. And that entity was like a poltergeist. Like he had the energy to move things, to slam doors, to make pictures fly off the wall, to make plates explode was another one that we had. So yeah, I think it was him because it was just such a strong energy, and you don't normally come across that very often. So more of the story, kiddies. Do not do a Ouija boards and do not do seances just for fun and, you know, no, just don't do it. Like the movies that you see, even though they're extremely exaggerated, yeah, they're true. Like it's dangerous. It is dangerous. There's certainly risks when you do that sort of shit. You know, these are ancient occultic practices. And if you don't know what you're doing, if you don't know how to protect yourself, and you don't know how to banish back entities and spirits and demons, then do not do it at all. Because when you are, you know, doing a Ouija board and seances, you're basically conjuring. You're like conjuring the spirit to like come to you, to make contact. You're opening gateways and doorways for them. So especially on Halloween, that's probably one of the most worst times to do it, of course, because you're guaranteed to definitely make contact with something. So those are my 4 ghost stories. I hope you enjoyed them. There will be more to come to celebrate Halloween. So until then, sleep tight and don't play around with occultic things. So lots of love to you, lots of light. Ahimsa.